Sahana vavatu, Sahano bhunaktu, Sahaviryam karavavahe, Tejasvina vadhitamastu, Ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May we be nurtured together, may we be nourished together, may we strive together, may our learning shine, may we not quarrel. Peace. Okay, would someone like to give us just a general comment or two what we've done so far?
The two major things we discussed in this chapter, the first one was karma yoga, and the second one was upasana.
Good. So these are the two major to-do sadhanas that we were speaking of. And yes, jnanam also has a to-do aspect to it. However, the whole jnanam is understanding that I don't need to do anything to be what I already am. However, the other former sadhanas, they sort of tell us, well, here's what you need to do because there's a need to do things because you think you're a doer. So here's something to do. So then it ultimately gives us to a stage of Jnana Yoga, which says you don't really need to do anything because you cannot do anything about your innocent existence.
Removing all that understanding and belief that I'm separate from Brahman.
Yeah, this is a deep inherent belief that we have that's beginningless. And we think that, I have to now do something to unify myself.
I also realized that karma, upasana and gyan, this is also the natural progression in the spiritual life of a human being. Karma needs to be done to purify our mind, which means to neutralize our likes and dislikes.
Yeah.
Unless that is done, and if we step into upasana, it will not yield to the desired results.
Yeah, good. So, when we think of these likes and dislikes, we often sometimes even think of them as like an enemy. I've got to get rid of my likes. I've got to be this neutral being who doesn't like or dislike anything. So there's nothing wrong inherently or intrinsically with likes and dislikes. We're just saying binding. So there's very strong likes and dislikes that sort of dominate a person's life, and they just unnecessarily take the time away from actually doing something that's productive. And so we're just talking about neutralizing those strong, things that you would say, I wish I could just not do this so often. Right? We're not talking about just, totally being a dead person in life and saying, well, what's the point of anything? That's not what this is about. Yeah. Okay. So we've seen that the spiritual life also comes with responsibilities. This means whoever is trying to grow and expand themselves and be a better person, there is amongst that way responsibilities that you as a bhakta have. And those responsibilities are in reference to your environment, because often we attend to spirituality or any kind of growth, and what happens is we forget other areas around us, and they begin to require our attention sometimes, and we kind of get lost in this path. And it's not like we're trying to not give the attention. It's just that that's how a human being is. You go into one thing and then you forget about your health. And you say, oh, now I've got back pain, I need to exercise. And then you go into exercise and you forget about Vedanta. So it's kind of like a back and forth pendulum. So this means the person has to be cautious as to how to manage their time. Now, especially managing your duty, your swadharma. So we talked about dharma briefly. Now I want to touch upon this concept of swadharma. Swadharma is your personal duty. This means duty that is very specific to your unique person, your unique birth. And swadharma isn't something that is kind of like this entire life. It's not one swadharma. It's changing ongoingly. So what is swadharma? First of all, it's knowing that the world is interconnected. Now, when I say it's interconnected, it means everything depends on everything else. It's relative. The tree depends on the rain, you depend on the food, the farmers depend on the money to receive for the farming and so on. So this means whatever you do as a person matters because the world is interconnected. In other words, your acts, your duties, swadharma, does indeed affect this world. This is where we say there are responsibilities for one who is in a genuine pursuit of growth. So this means that not only do you affect the world, yes, you certainly affect your environment. And what does this mean, like you affect your environment? Well, start with something simple. Start with your immediate environment. Everyone knows someone, right? So in other words, we all know people that are close to us. And those people that are close to us most often are the first ones to bear this change that you're having, that you're trying to grow. And they sort of notice this change, and sometimes there's some tension going on there. And this means not only do you affect yourself, but you affect someone that's close to you, but also affect those who are close to you, because your actions now inspire them. So don't say, number one, my existence is insignificant in this world, because the fact is everyone affects everyone else. As I said last session, we're all like babies. We'll watch and we subconsciously pick up these certain patterns that others are expressing, and then we think, well, that's normal. So indeed, your significance does matter. For example, you teach your child how to have proper discipline, and then your child makes 10 more friends, and then your child now is going to interact with 10 friends, and those 10 friends are going to pick up some traits from your own child who you've taught principles of Dharma, and those 10 others now, having been inspired, know 10 more people. So in other words, if you look at it from a big picture, just you, who seemingly seems insignificant, indeed from a larger scale have a huge impact in this world. So this means during our pursuit, number one, we cannot lose perspective. And what I mean by not lose perspective is one cannot now start to kind of narrow down their vision and say, this is all there is to me, I just need to improve and I forget about everything else. Because then, as I said, then something else is going to demand your attention, and then you're going to have to attend to that. So this means that even if a person becomes successful in their sadhana, still they cannot lose perspective. In other words, they cannot now say, well, I'm so successful, this is because of my time and my, my effort. The fact is you didn't create time. The fact is you didn't create your legs or your arms or your brain or your neurons. You're not moving your neurons and going, okay, well, I'm going to move my neurons so I can open up my mouth and communicate with someone. So all of these laws are happening behind the scenes. And this is what it means to not lose perspective. That in other words, you're totally dependent as a human being on this grand order for it to help you to move forward. So this means there's no question of going, oh, I'm so successful here and you're not. Because just to say that, you need so much to say that. You need air to breathe, right? You need eyes to see, to look at that person. You need the English language, which you weren't taught, but it was taught to you, right? So many, many things we depend on. Now, Swadharma has 3 challenges. So this means every one of us who is in this journey of growth will be confronted by one of these 3 challenges. The first one is, okay, what is Swadharma? Playing your role wherever appropriate. The first challenge is your responsibilities undergo change. So this means the script has to also change. The challenge sometimes is we want the script to remain the same. We want the script from a year ago to still keep playing. But the fact is, the world has changed, you have changed, your environment has changed, your thoughts have changed, everything has changed. This means Swadharma also is subject to change. This means if I say, no, this is who I am and this is my identity and there's no other than what I am now, this is rigidity. So the person has to let go of this rigidity. A common example is in a relationship, right? 2 people are together and then one of them wants the old script to be present right now. But that's not going to happen because both people have changed. And yet one of them, well, I wish you were like when you were 20 years ago. I wish you were like that now. That's unrealistic because there is no such thing as static person in this world, right? I know how it is, right? We want like the best parts of them when they were young to be true now, but that's just not the case. Okay. The second challenge is a spillover. This is whereby where you play a role. When I say a role, I'm talking about your Swadharma. You play a role, for example, at work. And suppose you cannot express your feelings to a colleague or to your boss. You want to be honest, but there's some fear there. Like, oh, it's not going to turn out well if I do. And then what do? We come home and then we project that unresolved emotion onto someone that is at home. This is called a spillover. I take an unresolved emotion from one role and I put it into another role. And this can go on for a long time. So this means the person has to be cautious if they're doing this spillover, because it is not fair for others to receive the harsh treatment or even the pleasant treatment on the basis of something that you should have isolated at one particular region. So we cannot just mix everything up and then you have no idea, what belongs where. So there's a certain structure that a person has to have in their life. The third and the last conflict is managing conflict between roles. And suppose that one partner has an important role in the family, and then the other feels excluded. This is conflict between roles. So this has to be resolved. Or one spouse, for example, does one form of spirituality and another spouse does another form of spirituality. And they're both genuine, right? They both are really trying to improve. However, there is this kind of silent disagreement as to who is on the more superior path, right? So this is a common situation that happens at home also. And the person also has to then confront this number 3 and therefore not let it deteriorate your environment. Because as I said it from the beginning, every person on this journey has a responsibility. Responsibility means maintaining peace and maintaining that order in your immediate environment, because it is not going to be helped by itself. It is your part to, your duty to indeed address it, to proactively do something about it. Okay, now in the last session, we've seen that Upasana Yoga level 1 was Ashtanga Yoga. I hope you remember this. And this Ashtanga Yoga involves again and again bringing your mind back to the object of meditation from everything else. Again and again, bringing the mind back from everything else to the object of meditation, to that one focal point of your focus. This is the crux of all teachings or trainings in developing mastery of your mind. Because what else is a masterful mind than one that can hold for a duration of time its focus on an area or a topic matter that is worthwhile or that is important to you? How is a person going to become good at anything if they sit down at a table or they're thinking in their sofa and their mind's like all over the place? It's trying to bring in yesterday, trying to bring in the kids, the grandchildren, tomorrow, where to go, COVID, what's going on in the news. It just cannot work like that. So this means we need to deliberately and consistently tame this restless mind, which consists of fountains of thoughts pertaining to your personal thoughts, called samskaras or your vasanas, pertaining to the environment, for example, neighbor, dog, airplane, cars, etc., pertaining to the memory, for example, something that happened yesterday, 5 years, it just comes, and also pertaining to the collective. This is another part that we have to deal with. Like, where is this thought coming from? It's also part of your collective. And therefore, the only way to stabilize this restless mind is, I said, again and again, bringing the mind back from everything else to that one focal point of your meditation. What's the benefit of this? Twofold. First of all, you're calmer, more composed, that is, and you can enjoy things for longer. Because how can a person enjoy things if they're trying to enjoy it and then suddenly a new memory pops in? I'm going to do something. Enjoyment over. So it is in your advantage to extend that focal point. So you can ask yourself as homework, what can I do if there is something, well, we learned last week, or is there something that I can do to help this brain extend that focus? So this means it's really about helping your brain to have that subtle, non-interruptive concentration power. Okay, and we said that this concentration power is done mainly through asana, that means finding a posture, It can even be, if you don't have to sit cross-legged, you can just sit on a chair, you can sit in a sofa or something. It consists of pranayama. This is breath control. It is the fastest way, by the way, to stabilize that restless mind through alternative nostril breathing or through some kind of a pattern-based breathing, and also through dharana. What is dharana? Again and again, bringing your mind back from everything else to that one object of concentration until you can hold that for at least 10 minutes, because that's going to have a spillover to everything else. Okay. Now, suppose that the person is highly active. They're highly outgoing. Suppose your mind is extroverted. It likes to, whenever it thinks, it always thinks about over there. It tends to go to the news. It tends to go to other people. It tends to go to what others are saying. What about others? In other words, this person, through their language, gives away that their mind, whenever it creates examples, it tends to create examples over there. It never makes the examples about itself. This reveals that mind is still extroverted. And that mind also tends to be uncomfortable with meditation. Now, suppose you're uncomfortable with meditation. You just don't get along with it. What's the solution? Then we go to Karma Yoga level 2. Okay. So now let's go to page 180 and begin Karma Yoga level 2.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
Whenever we talk about increasing the focus of mind, we usually say meditation is the can lead towards focusing the mind. So why only meditation? Because I also find that whenever I'm doing some work or some task which I'm interested in, for example, reading a book. When I read a book, I read the book for like many hours in one go. Is that not focused mind?
Good. So
if I do artwork,
Yes, absolutely. So in this context of these 5 sadhanas, because I'm mentioning level 1 Upasana Yoga, in this context, I said meditation, the Ashtanga Yoga is the method to concentration. Now, if we want to go outside Upasana Yoga, in fact, my own method of developing concentration power, art, programming, reading, studying, web design, coding, right? Piano playing. In other words, it doesn't really mean that you only develop concentration power. Oh, also puzzle games. Excellent. Love that stuff. So all of these things help us to develop that capacity to concentrate. You take a nice puzzle, like I have a book called 125 Greatest Puzzles Ever Made. And you just go into that and it's, it asks you how to solve a particular puzzle. You're like, how does this happen? I need to figure this out. 15 minutes later, you're in that puzzle and you're totally immersed into it. So it can be open eyes or closed eyes.
So there's no difference between the focus achieved through these other activities and the focus through meditation, right?
Whatever focal method works for you, that is the one that you can continue.
But then why do we only talk about meditation when we are talking about Upasana?
Sure, because in this context, I want to stick to the verse and I want to say Ashtanga Yoga is being mentioned here. And Ashtanga Yoga is specifically this process of Patanjali Yoga Sutra's 8 steps, which includes Dharana, which means concentration, closing eyes. Yeah. So I want to stay within the context. But it's good that you brought that up to kind of extend our possibility of concentration. Yeah. And also you will find that throughout life, you're not going to stick with one thing for concentration. Like you may do meditation maybe some years ago, maybe in the future, and then you move on to puzzles and you move on to art and you move on to reading and so on. So this means swadharma changes.
Sorry, Andre.
Yes.
What you were saying about puzzles and art and all this, isn't it external, like what we perceive and what we actually, that kind of meditation and focus is very different from what you're explaining to us and focusing inwards.
Yes, good. Okay, so again, remember Pratyahara was about withdrawing the senses, and I said you're not using your Pancha Karma Indriyani and your Jnana Indriyani, you're not using any of that. And now the Meena conversation has brought it into using organs of knowledge. So this is a totally different twist of how to develop that concentration power. But it still helps develop that concentration power nevertheless. Apyase pyasa martho se mat karma paramo bhava Madartham api karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi.
If you do not have the capacity for the practice of this yoga either, may you become one for whom action dedicated to me is paramount. Even doing actions for my sake, you will gain success.
Continue.
Suppose even this is not possible. To sit and do anything is almost impossible. Then set aside the meditation on Saguna Brahma and do your daily prayers and duty, dedicating them to me. Dedication is nothing but conformity with Dharma, looking upon it as Ishvara. Later in the 18th chapter, he tells us, worshipping that Lord from which all elements and beings have come, by whom all this is sustained, by his own duty, a man finds success. The entire creation, Jagat, is non-separate from Ishvara. With this awareness, worshipping with one's own karma, meaning doing what is called for at any given time and in any particular situation. A particular act of worship is not what is meant here, but the awareness of Ishvara as Dharma and conformity to it. By this, he says, a person gains success. Success here is a prepared mind through which one can gain knowledge. The real success is moksha.
Now continue the sentence, if it is not possible to. It's just 3 lines down.
If it is not possible to look upon Dharma as Ishvara, in the following verse, the Lord offers another alternative.
This is Karma Yoga level 1, by the way. Continue.
Perform all actions fulfilling your likes and dislikes in conformity with Dharma. When the result comes, offer it to me and then take it. This is common practice in India. Even though people may not know what is behind it, they do it. After cooking food, they first offer it to the Lord and then eat. If they build a house, they first offer it to him and then enter it. Anything new is offered to the Lord. A newborn child is offered to the Lord and therefore becomes prasada, what comes from the Lord. This is something anybody can do.
Thank you, that's enough. Okay, so verse 10 is Karma Yoga level 2. And then Krishna says, Abhyasa api asamarthaha. So if Abhyasa Yoga is a struggle, that means if Ashtanga Yoga is a struggle, then Matkarma Paramaha Bhava. Commit yourself to a life of activity, performing your duties within the society, and take the very society, including your family, colleagues, friends, as form of Ishvara. Not just society. It's not just society, oh, I'm doing this for the society. That very society that we're working for, that we're contributing to, is a form of Ishvara. I say in one sentence, I am an employee of God. That's the attitude of Karma Yoga level 2. Doing all actions for the sake of Bhagavan. Now, when you see the society as a form of the Lord, then what happens? It becomes much easier to conform to Dharma, much easier to incorporate Dharma throughout the day. Because see, it's easy to say, just go and just conform, offer your services to the society, which is what we're all doing anyway. But we're having an attitude change here. We're not saying now go out there and do new things to the society and become an activist and all of that. No, we're just saying, what you're already doing, look at it with a different attitude. And that is, I'm no longer just going out there and serving the society for my ends, but whoever I'm serving, I'm actually serving Ishvara in the form of these different people that I serve. And this has huge benefits from the standpoint of Karma Yoga. And the other way to look at this is, instead of just saying I'm serving the society in the form of Bhagavan, is just to understand what is a society. It is nothing but nimitta upadana karana, in the form of human beings, in the form of body, hair, right, eyes, limbs, language, right, brain, human being. Just like your entire body is nothing but intelligent and material cause making you now be this human being that you are. That same intelligence, same material is making other people be who they are. So this means I'm only ever serving that one cause of this entire creation. And that cause is not only that cause which creates what? Creates this world, creates you, creates the society. It also sustains. It also paves way for the new. It destroys the old to pave way for the new. And that same cause is making you now listen. That same cause is making this world go around right now. So what are we talking about here? We're saying that this cause, nimitta and upadana karanam, is the door, if you want to now include this word door. Now, who is the real door? Let's bring this question. First of all, is your body mind the door? No, because then I will ask you, what specifically is doing? Is it your fingers that are doing? Is it your mouth that is doing? Is it the lower lip that is doing the talking? The upper lip's doing it? Is it the throat that's doing the talking? Which brain cell's doing the thought of you saying something? Like which leg is moving from one to the left? Which muscle is actually doing this total action which you say, I do, right? So in other words, you have to now pinpoint who exactly is the doer. You can't find it wherever you look. Oh, my thought's the doer. Yeah, but that thought, where is that thought 5 minutes later? Where was that thought just 5 minutes ago? So in other words, we cannot find the doer anywhere in our body and in our minds. Now, from a practical standpoint, if someone asks me, who's the doer? I'm just going to say this. Your antahkarana is the door, your mind's the door, because this is a lot easier now than to give you this philosophical definition, which I will, who's the actual door, because it puts people in a responsible position. If I say your mind's the door, how does a person think now? They say, okay, well, my mind's the door, so obviously I'm going to now make sure that I'm responsible and I do things consciously, mindfully, therefore I'm the door. Now, the philosophical way to answer who is the door is we say Ishvara as the intelligent and material cause, which means just another name for Maya, and that cause facilitates the cause-effect relationship between objects. For example, now notice I did not say who's the doer, because this is actually an incorrect question, strictly speaking. Rather, I said what? Ishvara, which is both nimitta and upadana karanam, called Maya, in the presence of that power, it facilitates cause-effect relationships between two objects. For example, if I ask you right now, if I drop this pen, who's the doer? Is gravity the door or is pen the door? You can't say gravity is the door because you need the pen relative to the gravity to say gravity is the door. In other words, if you take the gravity away, then you can't, then who's the door? Can you say the pen's the door? No, because the pen needs the gravity to be the door. So the gravity needs the pen and the pen needs the gravity. Now, who exactly is the doer here? You can't find them. In other words, they are relative. That is what we call mithya. So wherever you look, can't find a door. For example, let's bring this more down to earth. If I say, go prune the garden. Right, now, who's the doer who prunes the garden? Is it the environment? No. Because the environment is not making everyone prune the garden. So it cannot be the environment. Is it the fingers that are the doers, cutting with the scissors? No. Is it the bones in the fingers? Is it the prana? No. Is it the emotion of displeasure towards the filthy garden? Is that the doer? No. Is it the rational conclusion that the garden needs pruning? Is that the doer? No, because that thought consists of what? It needs knowledge of branch, filth, long, short. Now, which of those concepts, those thoughts, which you learned at some point in the past, which of those thoughts is now the doer? So that cannot be the doer either. Is it your prarabdha karma? Is that the doer? No, because prarabdha karma has no awareness of its own. So then who's the doer? If you want to be a Vedantic speaking, then we will say this. Consciousness illumining the causal body, that is Maya, is the impersonal doer. You cannot say that anyone's the doer here. You can only say that consciousness illumining this causal body, Maya, which is nimitta and upadana karanam, in the presence of it, there is a cause-effect relationship between two objects. But none of those objects can be called the doers. In other words, you cannot find a door anywhere. Okay. Now, the question is, why does this karma yoga work? Like you say, karma yoga works, I said before. It's antahkarana shuddhi, as we just read. How does it work and why does it work? First of all, understand this. Your likes and dislikes are rooted in your sense of I. I like. I don't like. I like to drive fast cars. I like to drive slow. I like to drive, etc., right? Now, when you have dislike, what does that do? It causes a very narrow view of the world. Because if you like one thing, then you place yourself in a little bubble called the world of my likes, the world of my dislikes. Now, is it possible to have opportunities show up if you're isolated in this bubble of likes and dislikes? No, because when those opportunities come, I'm going to bounce them off because they do not comply to my likes and dislikes. So this means the more likes and dislikes I hold, the more I isolate myself in this private individual world. Now, what does Karma Yoga level 2 say? It says you need to subserve your likes and dislikes to Dharma. So the question now is, what is Dharma? Bhagavan. In other words, Dharma is all knowledge, all power expressed as a law on earth, which we call Dharma. Not only on earth, but also on Mars. It's not like you go to Mars and you forget Dharma. So in other words, Dharma is the truth that sustains this universe. So therefore, if you follow Dharma, if you subserve your little private bubble to Dharma, which is a lot larger, what are you doing? You're opening yourself up to a much grander, much vaster way of thinking, much grander view of life. So as long as I isolate myself to my likes and dislikes, I am simply I'm forcing myself to think limited. The moment I subserve that little isolated bubble to a much grander vision called Dharma, then the mind becomes a lot more sensitive to whatever happens. Okay. Now, some examples of karma yoga. In fact, nature is the best example of karma yoga. And this comes from the Shastra, actually. All of the rivers flow down from the Himalaya. And what do? They serve the humanity. Trees produce fruits, not for themselves, but for whoever can benefit. Cows, they give milk, again, not for themselves. Now they give milk more for humans than their own species. Trees give shade, and yet they take the scorching sun. So whoever wants to take rest underneath the shade, they get it for free. The tree doesn't complain. This is an example of karma yoga, service to the whole that nature can tell us. And actually, there's a nice story from one of my schools at Chinmaya that I remember. An example of karma yoga. So there was a smart child, and this child thought, I see that my mom is being paid money for working for her boss. So she does work and then she gets paid for it. So I think I'm going to make money the same way. So the child thought, this is a great way to make money. So the child asked, hey, Mom, can you give me some chores around the house? Mom said, gladly, son. You could go take the trash out. You can, prune the garden. You can do some things around the house. And the child came back doing all the chores and came back with a bill, said $3. Mom, $3 for 5 chores, please. So Mom thought, oh, okay, interesting, son. So the next morning, when the son woke up, he saw on his bedside table a long list. It was a long bill. And a mother wrote, bill for cooking, feeding you daily, teaching you how to walk, how to talk, bathing you, laundry, awoken when you were sick, stayed up all night just to keep you healthy. The list just kept going. And then at the bottom it said total $0. And then the kid was like, oh, wow, this is an amazing epiphany in the morning. And the kid realized this is what it means to have sheer love. That means the sheer love of the mom made her give up her personal likes and dislikes to serve the child. And this is what karma yoga is about. Subserving my likes and dislikes in the name of Dharma, because Dharma is much higher than my isolated little bubble. And this has huge benefits on the antahkarana shuddhi, on the purification of the mind, because you're aligning your mind with the grand order called Dharma. So these are all examples of what we call active contributions in one way or the other. And then Krishna says, avyapsyasi siddhim. In other words, following this, you will attain siddhim, perfection. In other words, you will attain self-growth, which will then lead to perfection. Now, the next verse is going to talk about Karma Yoga level 1. And Krishna is going to say, if you absolutely must fulfill your likes and dislikes, that means you cannot subserve your likes and dislikes because you love your personal bubble, and yet you still desire spiritual growth, no problems. We have Karma Yoga level 1 for you. Is Karma Yoga level 2 clear? Does it now mean that you're supposed to go out there and start serving everyone and be like the, you know, the shade of the tree and the rivers of the Himalayas and just totally sacrificing your life just for the well-being of everyone else? Athaitadapya shaktosi kartum madhyogam ashritaha sarva karma palatyagam tatah kuru yatatmavan.
If you are not able to do even this, being one whose commitment is dedicating all actions to me, then with a disciplined mind, give up the results of all actions to me.
Thank you. And they just skip down a little bit. It says, second paragraph, impelled by
your likes and dislikes, go about doing your karma. Even if you are self-centered, fulfill them as long as they do not transgress Dharma. But when the results come, renounce them all in the sense of graciously accepting them as prasada from Ishvara.
Thank you, that's enough. Okay, so we're on Karma Yoga level 1 now. Before going further, let's revise Karma Yoga level 2. We've just done that in verse 10. We've seen that Karma Yoga level 2 was about having mindfulness of Ishvara while performing actions, and also having the capacity for personal likes and dislikes to subserve Dharma. And then the question is also, what makes a Karma Yoga level 2 do or perform Karma Yoga level 2? What's the reason behind it? Such a person knows that actions and results are part of the grand order. The actions are because of the grand order, and so are the results because of the grand order. And therefore, this body-mind that we are endowed with is only an instrument by which or through which this grand order dances, cries, smiles, talks, and performs its dance of life. It is just an instrument, this body-mind, that we, sort of glorify and we try to make pretty and strong and big muscles and this and that. It's just from the standpoint of higher thinking, then it just starts to lose sense of trying to abuse this body for what it's not meant for. Okay. And also the Karma Yogi level 2 understands that by aligning this instrument, this body-mind, to the grand order, as I said in the last session, it is then guiding, it is placing itself in that track of that vast intelligence, because it is aligning with the vast intelligence called Dharma. Also, Karma Yoga level 2, I discussed some time ago, is called Nishkama Bhakti. Now, Karma Yoga level 1 is called Sakama Bhakti. So the question is now, what if you sincerely enjoy many personal likes and dislikes and feel like life would be empty without them? Talking about, I can't give up my likes and dislikes. This is the whole purpose here, is just to enjoy yourself. Now, we're not talking about giving up anything, by the way. We're just talking about letting go of those binding, strong likes and dislikes. So what do we do? Well, then, what we do is Karma Yoga level 1. Now, what is the essence of level 1? It is, first of all, Krishna says, go ahead, fulfill them gladly. Fulfill your likes and dislikes, but make sure they're all aligned. That means all of your decisions and actions are aligned to the grand order, Dharma. If they're not, it cannot be considered Karma Yoga level 1. Then, there is no need to think about Ishvara while performing your actions. You only think about Ishvara when results of your actions come. Okay, so in other words, then you consider that result Ishvara Prasada. This is the essence of Karma Yoga level 1. The question now is, what is Ishvara Prasada? What does the word prasada mean? In Sanskrit, it literally means tranquility of the mind. In other words, I enjoy tranquility of the mind when I'm no longer heavily invested in specific results occurring. How is a person going to enjoy tranquility of the mind when they're constantly expecting specific results coming in their favor of their likes and dislikes? It's impossible. It's going to be in a constant struggle or constant fear or constant concern to try to manipulate the environment so it more closely matches my preferences. But in reality, that is simply impossible because there are so many variables that are contributing to the final product called the effect to which then comes to us. Therefore, prasada is only possible when the person gives up resistance to how things should and shouldn't be. So most of the suffering that a person enjoys or doesn't enjoy comes from this one contributor, and that is how things should be, how things shouldn't be. If they're like this, and I think it should be like that, then there's conflict between two people, between the person and the object in the relationship, and then, so it's a constant struggle. So this means the person has to realize it is impossible to receive a result that exactly matches what I expect it to be, because I don't control the grand order. In fact, the grand order controls this body. Okay. Now, Karma Yoga per level 1 in the book says, Atha etad api ashaktaha asi kartum. In other words, Krishna says, if you're unwilling or unable to commit yourself to putting this grand order, the center of your life, then take to Sakama Bhakti, that is Karma Yoga level 1. In other words, continue to fulfill your Raga Dvesha for the sake of worldly or personal benefits, and ensure they all follow a level of ethics or morals. Suppose you're a manager of a company or you got some important position, then we're not saying now do things differently. We're just saying, first of all, continue doing exactly what you're doing right now, but ensure those actions are more in line with ethics. And whatever results come from those actions, suppose you need to fill in a report or some project for the company, then if that project is fantastic, or if it's a failure, then you don't go, oh, you know, it's all because of me. And you don't start judging your own ability, because you understand that you've done simply whatever you could, but that report went out into the field. The moment it's out there, that is it. That is out of your control now, because other people, other minds may now see it and they may be in a bad mood and say, no, this is not a good report. But if you gave them the report one day later, they would say, this is the best report we've ever seen. So this means these variables do indeed contribute and we need to include them. Thus, our minds remains in tranquility mode. Okay. And then Krishna says, Sarva karma palatyagam. But don't call the accomplishments mine. Take them as the blessing of the grand order, is what I just said. In other words, this makes you more accommodative towards pleasant and unpleasant experiences. As I said, because your mind is in tranquility mode. It's not now concerned about more or having less or having it exactly as you wanted. The fact is you don't know how it's going to come back. Now, this Karma Yoga level 1 has two effects. First of all, it sanctifies your personal desires. In other words, it makes your personal desires more holy. It includes an association to the Lord. In other words, the relationship would then purify them through the course of time. There was a nice story true story of a devout man who was an alcoholic, and he was devout also. He had his personal Ishtadeva, and he went to Ramakrishna. It was 1800s, I believe. And he says, Ramakrishna, I'm an alcoholic and I don't know how to stop. And Ramakrishna asked him, who's your Ishtadeva? I think it was like Saraswati or Ganapati or someone. And he said to him, he says, well, take this bottle of alcohol and place it on the altar. Offer this alcohol to the Lord. And he's okay, I'll try that. So he went to the altar, and he felt so guilty that he couldn't give alcohol to the Lord. And because his identity was placed in his Ishtadeva, he made a conclusion: if I cannot give this alcohol to my Ishtadeva, and I identify with my Ishtadeva, then I cannot have this alcohol myself. And he came back to Ramakrishna and said, thank you for that simple suggestion. I've stopped drinking. Another example is how your desires get sanctified by associating them with the Lord. Is suppose that you were a child. We're all crazy about balloons, right? Birthday party and then balloons. We're like, wow, balloons. But now, suppose it's your 25th birthday and someone puts balloons. Do you feel as excited as you were as a child? Right? When the child, like one balloon popped and you just lost it? No. So our relationship changes through the course of time. In other words, our relationship got sanctified by the mere maturity of life alone. So Karma Yoga level 1 in itself sanctifies these distortions which make this like or dislike extremely valuable. And then we're like, I have to have this, and I love this, I can't live without this. The moment you bring sanctity or divinity into it, then you change the relationship to it. You make it a lot more clear. Now, the second effect of Karma Yoga level 1 is these rigid expectations, as I said previously, of how things should and shouldn't. They no longer have an emotional toll on you. So the question is, where do these emotional tolls come from? Most of them come from when you attempt to own your result as mine. I did it because I did it. Here's how because I'm good. Therefore, the result should be awesome. The moment we say that, we've just now placed ourselves in a position of, right, you just don't know how it's going to turn out. That means you're opening yourself up to disappointment or happiness. You just don't know. So the moment we say, I want to own, this talk, I want to own this presentation, I want to own this delivery, I want to own this project that I've given to the company. And suppose the company even compliments you and you go, wow, I'm so great. The moment you do that, you just open yourself up to the polar opposite. Suppose someone says, yeah, however, you could have done some improvement here, or it wasn't that good actually, or something. So in other words, now you go to this other extreme. So in other words, by associating divinity and recognizing, by offloading this result to the grand order, you literally protect yourself from this constant extreme, this emotional toll of going left to right. And this is what we call having equanimity of the mind. This equanimity of the mind is called prasada buddhi. So when we say equanimity of the mind, we're not talking about being equal towards everything. Something happy, great. Jackpot, fantastic. House burns down, fantastic. That's not what equanimity of the mind means. It just means that I do not know as a human being how the result is going to come. Therefore, what's the point of being overexcited or over-depressed when it could have turned out anyhow?
It is clear, but I have a doubt. Like, how do we achieve it? Because so far in Karma Yoga 1, we are saying that when we initiate the task, the driving forces are own raga, dvesha, likes and dislikes, right? And even throughout the process of that work or the task, that when we are performing it, we are not dedicating it to God, right? We're doing it for our own likes and dislikes.
Yeah,
Then what would happen when the result will come, that it triggers me to have a prasada buddhi all of a sudden? So that's the first question.
Right.
And the second one is, if we do not worry too much about result, wouldn't it lead to a casual or carefree attitude towards doing a task or performing work?
Okay, good. Okay. So the first one was, if something does trigger. Now, first of all, we're not saying you're not going to get triggered, because the point is, we have these deep ingrained notions, and they're mostly conditions, and they will cause a trigger. However, it doesn't now mean that, okay, now it's come, now it's too late. You can still have a relationship with it when it does come. you can simply thank it. You can say, I'm glad that it's happened. Now let's enjoy it while this enjoyment lasts in my body, and then let's move on. In that same case, if something does turn out and your employer or employee is not happy, then instead of succumbing to that, those feelings of depression, or you just focus on solution mode. Okay, what can we do? Because what's happened has happened. It's gone now. Let's focus on what can we do right now. So this means stay in solution mode instead of, sure, enjoy it if it does come, but then continue with solution mode. And the second one is, if you don't worry too much, then we may end up having a lesser performance. We may end up putting less performance or less effort into attaining the particular work. First of all, I'm glad you brought this up, because it's a common assumption, and I just let go. I don't have to put any work into it, whatever happens. So, okay. So if we look at it in this way, we can now say, well, so what, right? Because whatever happens, happens. Therefore, the assumption now is do whatever you can, just get it over and done with anyway. But think about it this way. Suppose you continue with this attitude. Are you going to feel good about yourself? How you just kind of like, giving like 25% when you know clearly that you're so much more than just 25%? No way. So in other words, the person simply cannot help themselves, but if they truly enjoy the work, they will give their best anyway. Because who benefits? You benefit. It makes you feel good if you're doing the best that you can. If you deliver, work with concentration, with the attitude of professionalism, all of these things make you or give you a sense of confidence.
And I think that's the reason we get attached to the result. That, okay, I have put in my heart and soul in this particular task, and this is the result I'm getting.
True. Yeah, that is, see, there's nothing wrong with being attached, because as a human being, you will have a certain enjoyment. You're like, wow, I'm doing work and I'm so good at what I'm doing. Now, it's not coming out of arrogance. It's not coming out of pride. It's just coming out of that innocent, man, this is like amazing what's coming out of me. But at the same time, focus on your work, right? Focus on that enjoyment of that work. If the results come, fine, enjoy them. If the results don't come, focus on what you really enjoy to do.
And if this Karma Yoga 1 is done as we are taught in Gita, it will lead to us towards Karma Yoga 2, right? Because our likes and dislikes will now be somewhat fade away. Yeah, good.
So actually, let me compare Karma Yoga level 1 and Karma Yoga level 2 to answer that question. So Karma Yoga level 1 is being mindful. That means I'm being conscious of the grand order only during the consequences. That means the results of my actions. That is it. In fact, this is a common practice in India, as we just read. We don't think of Ishvara while cooking food. You think about, who am I going to give this food to? When you think of Ishvara, only when you sit down at a dinner table. That is literally Karma Yoga level 1 right there. And it's the easiest sadhana to do. Why? Because you only think about the grand order when you receive this juicy or not so juicy result. Karma Yoga level 2 is also being mindful of the grand order during your current present actions right now, but also during the consequences of your actions. So this means Karma Yoga level 2 has that aspect of including or associating Ishvara in your actions, whereas Karma Yoga level 1 lacks that. Okay, now again, let me summarize Karma Yoga level 1. Whatever results come to you as a result of your actions, take it as being given by Bhagavan. They're not yours. They're Bhagavan's. They're the grand orders. In Karma Yoga level 1, you are the karta. I am the doer. I am the cause. But Bhagavan is the karma pala data. He is the deliverer of the results of my actions. I am the doer, but Bhagavan is the giver. Karma Yoga level 2, Bhagavan is the grand order. In the presence of it, there is doing, but also in the presence of the grand order, there is receiving. So this means in Karma Yoga level 1, consciously the person acknowledges Ishvara at whatever happens. You turn the car on, Parameshwaraha. Before eating, Parameshwaraha. Before going to sleep, Parameshwaraha. After waking up, Parameshwaraha. Arriving home, thank God that I got home there safely. Okay. Now suppose that a person is unwilling to do Karma Yoga level 1. What now? Suppose a person doesn't even want to think about the grand order after receiving the results of his work. Then what do we say? We say, Mr. or Mrs., better luck next time, next life. Because in the Shastra, Karma Yoga level 1 is the lowest spiritual sadhana, the lowest entry point to be considered on your way to self-growth, self-expansion. So according to Shastra, this is the case. And I cannot tell you how many people I know who are very successful in life. They're honest, sincere people. And yet, whatever results they receive, they don't even consider the Lord in that aspect. You can even donate. You can be someone like a billionaire and donate money to the kids and receive great results. See how you're saving the lives of millions of kids and it's making a huge difference. And you don't think of God? Better luck next time. It's simple as that. Now, next verse, Krishna wants to conclude the discussion of spiritual sadhana. Shreyo hi jnanam apyasad jnana dhyanam vishishyate dhyanat karma pala tyagaha tyaga chantiranantaram.
Knowledge is better indeed than the practice of yoga. Meditation is superior to knowledge. Renunciation of the results of action is better than meditation. Because of renunciation, there is peace immediately.
The verse has a certain order, which is better than which. So take note of these keywords: knowledge, practice of yoga, meditation, and renunciation of results of action. We need to remember that Arjuna, this is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna is a mumukshu. Mumukshu is someone that is desirer of growth, desirer of perfection. So in verse 12, Krishna is going to point out 4 sadhanas for that very end, for the mumukshu, who is a desirer of perfection. And these 4 sadhanas are actually the 5 sadhanas that we just spoke about in verse 3 to 11, but they're looked at from a different standpoint. And the result of these 4 sadhanas, for all of them that we're about to now see, is shanti. Shanti means, in other words, without peace, right? With a peaceful, tranquil mind. So without that peaceful, calm, composed mind, what's going to happen? Self-growth and self-knowledge simply doesn't stick. In other words, without shanti, which I gained through these 4 sadhanas or the 5 sadhanas that we've done, then whatever I learn, whatever you and I learn, it simply doesn't stick. So if the person is complaining and saying, this is not working for me, and the moment the session ends, I'm back into my usual old mode, and I wish things just stay with me, like I just see this knowledge, I live this knowledge, I am this knowledge. If the person says this, my simple statement to that is because the mind still needs antahkarana shuddhi. It still needs work, concentration power. It still needs to tame its, going all over the place. Okay. Now the 4 sadhanas are, I'm going to use Sanskrit here because it's easier for me. Apyasaha. Okay, just pay attention to Sanskrit and I'll give you the English later on because it's easier for me. Apyasaha is meditation without knowledge. So I'm meditating, all right, but it's not backed up by any kind of knowledge. This is actually Upasana Yoga level 1, specifically asana and pranayama. So this kind of meditation is mechanical, right? You just little interest or no understanding in the knowledge of reality. Just sit down, do some postures, do some breathing, and you're a happy chappy for the rest of your day. I believe 95% of the yoga world constitutes of asana and pratyahara. I'm not sure, maybe 90% or 85 or something. Okay. So this person in Abhyasaha lacks Atma Anatma Viveka because they don't have knowledge. You need knowledge in order to discern the changing and the unchanging principle. And therefore, they also lack Vairagya, dispassion. So in other words, they just sit down for the sake of having that temporary relief from the day's struggles. This person also doesn't have goals in life. They don't know what they quite want. Why am I doing this sadhana? So they just sit down and looking for some big experience. So this person is trying to get there, but their mind is not quite in that mode of focus. They're still sort of like going, you know, they're looking, they don't know what they want. They're hoping to come to some big experience. So in other words, my main goal here is to be healthy. I want to be a healthy human being, but I don't know exactly what it means to be healthy. Okay. Then Krishna says Jnanam. Now, I'm going to give you two perspectives because when I teach, I give you three perspectives usually from Chinmaya school, from Paramarthananda and Swami Dayananda. So you usually hear from all three of them. And I also give my fourth one. Paramarthananda says that this knowledge, this jnanam, is referring to Jnana Yoga. However, I'm going to go more with Swami Dayananda on this one. And he said that this jnanam refers to the knowledge of the four purusharthas. If you read the text, you'll see this. The four purusharthas, that means knowledge of what are the four goals in life. Is it, you know, where does dharma stand, artha stand, kama stand, and where does moksha stand? So I will call this basic knowledge. Therefore, when you hear jnanam, I'm referring to basic knowledge, just basic knowledge of the four purusharthas. Nothing exclusive, not so much into Jnana Yoga, even though Swami Paramarthananda will say Jnana Yoga. So it could be either Jnana Yoga or this basic knowledge of the goals of life. Then Dhyanam. Dhyanam is meditation with Jnanam, with this basic knowledge. So we can say this is Upasana Yoga level 1 because it's meditation, Upasana Yoga level 2, and this basic knowledge. It's a mixture of that. So this is a mixture of meditation and basic knowledge. Or if you want to take it from a standpoint of Paramarthananda, meditation plus Jnana Yoga. They both work. I see no contradiction between them. Okay. And then the fourth one is Karma Pala Tyaga. Karma Pala Tyaga, this is Karma Yoga level 1. We just done this in verse 11. This is dedicating all of your karma pala to Bhagavan as Ishvara Prasada. It is a gift. It is a gift from the Grand Order, the result. Now, knowing that, what does Krishna say? Jnanam is better than Abhyasaha. That means mechanical meditation. So basic knowledge of the four purusharthas is better than mechanical meditation. Instead of just sitting down doing asana, pranayama, at least have some basic knowledge. Much better than just doing this mechanical meditation. Then he says, Dhyanam, that means meditation with basic knowledge, is better than just knowledge. Why? Because you're integrating it with meditation. Meditators will know clearly, whenever you go into meditative state, huge loads of epiphanies comes, clarity comes. And then he says, even better than dhyanam, that means meditation with knowledge, is karma pala tyaga. Karma Yoga level 1. Ooh, contradiction here. The best sadhana in verse 12 is Karma Yoga level 1. Why would Krishna say this? Why would the lowest be the highest?
Is it because he's referring specifically to Arjuna?
I mean, Arjuna is quite sophisticated. He is, you know, not just Karma Yoga level 1, but that's a good thought. Victor?
This can be practiced by many people. And it's easy.
That would be a prerequisite for all of the others.
Super. Okay. This is with Nima. I'm going to put Victor and Nima here. The first reason is whenever you associate results to the Lord, to a grander order, to divinity, what happens to your attitude? Immediately you lighten up. You bring cheer and composure into your life. Whenever you bring this divinity, this all knowledge, all power into your life. And what does this do? It leads to sharper thinking, more cheerful thinking, because when you're happier, you're much more open, emotionally stable to contemplate on higher realities, on the grand order. And the second reason is Krishna knows that I believe the second reason is what Paramarthananda said. So I'm always including both reasons here. The second reason is Krishna, which I'm more obliged to agree with, believes that, or should we say knows that most people are only ready, as Nima has said, for Karma Yoga level 1. Even the mass spiritual world that we call finds Karma Yoga level 2 unappealing. They say, I can't enjoy myself. How can I enjoy myself if all of my actions, if all of my likes and dislikes are being subserved to Dharma? The whole point of life is to, do whatever you like, whatever you dislike, and stay away from that. Just remain safe and get into what you're good at and so on. So Krishna's intention, we have to look at. What is Krishna's intention for saying this? It is to encourage majority of people, even the readers of Bhagavad Gita, who are seemingly sophisticated, or at least, supposed to be sophisticated, majority are only going to pursue Karma Yoga level 1 because it is the easiest. And that alone is going to take them to Karma Yoga level 2. So you can see the beauty of the scriptures. It's not about, sometimes you need to use semantics, your twist of words, in order to get the person from a low to a high. It's not like being, let go of Karma Yoga, it's a waste of time, and just go into a higher. It's not like that. As we said, it's not black or white. You need to be very careful how to, sometimes reverse psychology to get the person from their state of disempowerment to a higher state. So Krishna here is highlighting the importance of Karma Yoga level 1 by stating it is the best. And he knows it's the easiest, therefore most people say, oh wow, let me get into Karma Yoga level 1. And through the course of time, 10 years, maybe a lifetime later, some of them will pass now level 2, Jnana Yoga, etc. The next verse, 13, we're going to enter the second part of chapter 12. And this is going to be the characteristics of a Nyani, of a liberated person. This is going to be mentioned in verse 13 and verse 19. And then verse 20 will be the conclusion. Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitrah karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankaraha samaduhka sukha kshami.
The one who has no hatred for all beings, who has the disposition of a friend, who is compassionate, free from possessiveness, free from doership, equal in pleasant and unpleasant situations, and indeed one who is naturally accommodative. These verses from here up to the last but one in the chapter talk about the person who is a sannyasi and Nyani, even though later he says that devotee is beloved to me, sabaktaha me priyaha, he is not talking about the devotee that we commonly understand, the one who makes a division between himself and Ishvara due to ignorance. If a devotee had this notion of difference between Jiva and Ishvara, he would not have the qualification mentioned in this verse. These are attributes only of a person who is a Kritakritaya, who has found fulfillment through knowing that by nature he is free from any limitation. Because of that knowledge, he is spontaneously free from hatred, dvesha, and so on. So, these qualifications are meant to describe a wise man, not a devotee or a karma yogi, but they are told with the seeker in view. If you want to be free from hatred, well, that happens to be the nature of Atma. If there is no doubt or vagueness that the nature of Atma is fullness, Ananda, the expression in interacting with the world will be based in that Ananda and will express as love, the one basic emotion that modifies into compassion, friendliness, and so on, as the situation requires. All these are expressions of one Ananda, though these qualities describe a wise man. They are not meant to judge whether a person is wise. They are purely descriptions of those values and attitudes that a seeker should cultivate.
The one who is free from hatred, aggressor towards all beings. This is one of the most important qualifications of a sannyasi. Chankara says, even though a person may cause him some pain, the Nyani does not entertain any hatred or ill will towards a person. For him, this is very natural, because he sees all creatures as himself. Though it is an expression in keeping with the Shastra, psychologically speaking, this is how it works. Hatred arises only when someone can make you unhappy. If someone cheats you and you feel cheated, naturally you will hate the person. You have been deceived and feel outraged. If you depend upon the world, you will definitely divide the world into objects of raja and dvesa. An object that you think makes you unhappy, you will naturally hate. But if you have inner freedom concerning your dependence upon the world for your fullness, your vision is purely objective and love is your natural expression.
Thank you, that's enough. Suppose that a bhakta performs all 5 sadhanas, or the 4 in a prior verse, successfully, and is now a Nyani. Nyani, another name, is Jivan Muktaha. What does Jivan Muktaha mean? It means to such a Purusha, Purusha means a person, there is no essential difference between I and Ishvara. Just as a wave and the ocean, they are not 2 different entities, but rather they are 2 different names for the one same water. The wave is water, but also the ocean is just water. So they're just 2 different names to refer to the one same content. So this means there's no final substance called wave. There is no final substance called ocean. There is only one substance called water. In that same way, there's no final substance called Ishvara or final substance called Jiva. There is only Brahman. So then the question is then, why do we have these different names of Jiva, Ishvara, Brahman, Maya, Nimitta, Upadana, etc.? That is for the person who finds themselves in this Vyavaharika transactional empirical reality to help their mind understand, to make sense of this seemingly multiplicity, this dualistic world. So then the Shastra has to create these concepts in order to help this mind who's going, where am I? What is my position in this universe? How did existence come? How did all this come? What's my relationship to the macrocosm? What is the microcosm, macrocosm? What makes this world go around? And therefore the Shastra then creates these words. And then we study them in Advaita Vedanta. So therefore, having this direct knowledge, which is what is a Jivan Muktaha, suppose that Jivan Muktaha is now the wave. So that wave can now say, water alone is. Now when the wave, who is a Jivan Muktaha, says that, what is that wave actually referring to? Itself, because itself is the water. So whether the wave says water alone is or I alone am, it is only ever referring to the one content, which is the water. In that same way, Brahman is not an object of knowledge for a Jivan Muktaha. It's not something, oh, okay, so Brahman's over there and I am Brahman. Okay, so that's true. Okay, let me hold that knowledge in me. It's just a direct knowledge that is called aparoksha jnana, direct understanding that the very I, the subject, the one that is listening to this, is the final reality, It is the most simplest truth there is. Any difficulty pertaining to this simple truth is simply by the mere fact that the mind has always tried to make itself anything other than what it always was. That is pure, ordinary existence. It always says, no, I am sad, I am happy, I am smart, I am a philosopher, I am this, I am that. And you cannot ever just own up and say, these are all roles coming in and out of my existence. I am just this ordinary presence that is called Brahman. So this is a Jivan Muktaha. Now, the question is, how does such a Bhakta, that is a Jivan Muktaha, how do they conduct themselves in this world? How do they deal with challenges in home or at work or in society? So the purpose of knowing this, before we getting into it, is you ask, why should I know this? First of all is, once you know the highest expression of a human being, which is a Jivan Muktaha, then you know what to aim for. It's kind of like reading a biography. You read a biography of someone that you adore, and you get inspired by that. Like, oh, okay, so they did this, this is how they conduct themselves. And then you just start following the exact same thing. And then you get there very fast. Therefore, by understanding the traits of a Nyani or a Jivan Muktaha, you can turn that into a value for yourself and thus accelerate your own self-growth. And also, the third reason is, the question is, how do you know whether, when I say you, suppose you are the mumukshu, the desirer of moksha, how do you, the mumukshu, know whether you're a Jivan Muktaha or not? Because there are, I tell you, many people who have this knowledge, but because they have not been properly educated, they think there's so much more. No, I'm supposed to feel like expensive. And then you get into their mind and they actually understand exactly what Vedanta has been saying all along. So this checklist is going to help you see whether you're already understanding or having a certain clarity or what areas need to be looked into. We will also see that a Jnani cannot be identified by the outer appearances, like they're supposed to talk really slow. If they talk really fast, they're not a Jivan Muktaha. If they talk really fast or move very fast, no way. They have to move slow. They have to be calm. They have to shine like this blinding light around their head. And they have to have a certain disposition about them. They have to wear 108 beads. They have to have a certain kind of clothes. In other words, none of these things give away a Jivan Muktaha. They can speak as fast as slow. They can walk and talk however they want. Rather, what does help us see, or what kind of traits does a Jivan Muktaha have? That is the perspective towards the world. And what is the perspective coming from? Your mind. And what is the mind? What does that imply? I did a lot of work in the past. Therefore, the Jivan Muktaha is the one who has performed the 5 sadhanas, which have significantly changed or modified or aligned their views with the world as it is. It's called objectivity with the Vyavaharika world. They stop superimposing their personal likes and dislikes onto things, giving them values that they don't inherently deserve. Therefore, they see things simply as they are. On the basis of that, they carry this objectivity about their views about the world. Also, Jivan Muktaha, it does not matter whether in a wedlock or a single person, because this is also appearances. It has nothing to do with it. In fact, our Vedic culture, most of it some time ago, hundreds of years ago, was wedlock. Even the gurus were in wedlock. So this whole thing about I need to be single and I need to, this is like hindering my growth. This is all distortions that a Jivan Muktaha has corrected. So this means the person has now corrected these notions. There is no such principle as someone is obstructing my path to liberation. That is just distorted thinking. That is an idea that a person is putting in and saying this idea that the grass is greener on the other side. And also this checklist that we're about to go through, it shouldn't be used to now go and take a little notepad and go, okay, they talk slow, plus 1 point. They wear orange clothes, plus 1 point. Okay. Oh, they're a little bit crazy. Okay, minus 1 point. So this is not what we do. Rather, this checklist is to be used in reference to yourself. This means this is a personal grow. This is not a growth about judging others. Adveshta sarva bhutanam. The first virtue of a jnani is lack of feelings of belittlement or hatred towards sentient and insentient objects. So let's talk about hatred from two standpoints. The first is from a practical standpoint, and also the second is from a jnani standpoint. Because I don't want to just talk about hatred, about jnani. I want to talk about us. Like, what can we now, let's talk about hatred in general. So what is hatred?
Hatred is like a result of anger. Anger is a result of fear. I mean, to quote Star Wars, something like that, I guess.
Yeah. Anger and hatred are very closely related.
And I believe the root is the fear, I guess.
Fear, right? Fear of. And what could a person that's hating, what could they be fearing?
They might be fearing their supremacy or fear of injury from the other person. Or
okay, threat, a perceived
fear
threat.
of perceived threat or perceived loss of their own importance, I guess.
Okay, perceived threat or loss. Okay, good. Okay.
Strong dislikes.
Like a real invested dislike in something particular.
A betrayal of their feelings of love, which have gone before.
Betrayal, okay. Okay, betrayal, I would also say it's fear of not being included, or fear of not being loved.
Sometimes we tend to identify with ourselves, that insecurity.
Okay, identify with ourselves, yeah.
If I can tell from my own life experience, before introduction of Advaita, like I used to identify like two people were different, but like in Advaita, like the underlying Atma is essentially same. The body mind are the things that are different, but the underlying, the entity, Atma, whatever we call it, that's exactly same. So it's illogical to even think like there are two people. So hatred went away.
Okay.
Mostly, yeah.
Okay, I was also going to bring that up. Yeah, that's I'm going to put that in the Nyani, because that's I'm going to say hatred from two aspects: management and Nyani. So that's going to be in the Nyani section. Okay. So what is hatred? So hatred is a feeling of ill will. That means I want something bad to happen to the other person. I imagine it, I perceive it, them sort of dying or getting sick or going out of existence. I just don't want them to, I don't want it to exist. That's the extreme version of hatred, of course. I'm not saying it's the only version. So there is an ill feeling, there's an ill will towards an object of my hate. And it comes usually from behaviors or words that trigger us. Someone says a word, and it calls forth an anger. If someone has a certain behavior or a certain thought about the world or certain idea how things should be, and then it triggers this extreme dislike, like, no, I cannot handle this. And one way to elevate this, by the way, is by, first of all, not putting yourself in situations that trigger hatred. Because what is hatred? It is a learned response in most cases. So if the person puts themselves in a situation and it just keeps re-triggering this hatred, what's going to happen? Is it ever going to leave? No. So this means sometimes you need to just back away from those triggering environments and just let that memory fade away, this emotion, because it's kind of like having a plant called hatred. And every morning you wake up and you water this plant. And next day you just water this plant. Is the plant ever going to die? No. So this means, how do we water our mind, our emotions that are like hatred and all these negative emotions? We simply expose ourselves to the news, and you see all sorts of funny things going on, and it's like, oh, how dare they? So it just keeps on reminding us of these emotional responses, and it just never dies. So this is one of the simplest ways, is to simplify your life. Just stop being involved in those things that trigger these negative feelings. It's simple as that. And through the course of time, you simply let that plant of hatred wither away by itself. Now, this hatred arises when there is, I think Mina was saying this, when there is a strong emotional dislike towards an object. And this dislike is unguided by buddhi, by the intellect. Therefore, if the dislike is not guided by the buddhi, that means you're not applying your analyzing analytical power, then what's going to happen? That hatred is going to keep coming on and on and on. Because my question is, what exactly do you hate? Are you hating their lips for saying that? Their vocal, their tone, their voice box for saying that statement? Are you hating their nose, their heart for beating and keeping them alive? Are you hating, which thought in them are you hating? Are you hating their legs, their little cheeks? Which teeth are you hating? So you need to be specific, but we don't apply our buddhis. We just say, I hate it. And so we generalize the entire person as one big object of hate. But if you look specifically, you can't find one thing that you can actually hate. Because like
what about behavior?
Yeah, okay, now behavior. Now what specifically, what in their behavior are you hating? Are you hating their point of view? Because their point of view, was that gotten from them, was it gotten from someone else? They got that point of view from someone else. So now, are you supposed to hate someone else? And where did that someone else get their view from? So in other words, you can't like stop, and you keep searching, you just cannot find the object of hate. It just goes into an endless regression. We cannot find the object of hate. But if you apply your buddhi, you come to this conclusion. But because we don't apply our buddhi, we just say, I dislike this object strongly, it deserves to die, it deserves to disappear, and we don't want it. But the person is innocent. I mean, they're just, they're just believing certain views of life, and they think it's right according to their view. They certainly have a following, and they're certainly helping some people. So now why exactly should I hate that? Because who actually gets hurt by hating? The hater. Where does that emotional response go onto? Onto the very hater. Does the hated know anything about your hate? Zero. They're completely intact. They're having a ball. They keep on saying whatever they're saying. And here's the person like just swimming in their little hate towards another object. I think there was a nice quote that one said, I think it was anger or hatred. Having hate towards someone is like putting fuel on yourself and expecting them to get burned. I think it went something like that. So this is the same idea. The hater is the one who is giving ahimsa onto one own self. Okay.
That's why forgiveness works.
Yeah, sure. I mean, forgiveness is not understanding. That means applying your buddhi and seeing what exactly do I dislike. Now, be specific at least. That is one step better than just generalizing the person as an object of hate. If you cannot find a specific about it, then it becomes your own issue. In other words, you're making it about yourself. I cannot handle them having this certain view about the world, and for that reason, I wanted to disappear off the face of the planet. That means it's entirely about you and not about them. So again, what is hatred? It is stopping at that emotional reaction and then letting the intellect justify that. That's hatred. When instead, you should use this God-given buddhi to analyze what specifically, let me look into the subject matter. So Nyani standpoint, why is there absence of hate in a Nyani, in a Jivan Muktaha? There are several reasons. First of all, he or she knows that every person is intrinsically good, pure. There's no such person in this world that is an impure person. In other words, one adharmic act does not define the entire Purusha. So you cannot judge the person. In fact, I was listening to, during my spare time, you say, what do you do during your spare time? I look at documentaries. And one of the documentaries has to involve with people. And I like to look at documentaries with prisoners because I want to see their psychology. What is the psychology of a killer, of a rapist, of someone that is just, causing damage to the society? And you actually look at them and they will all say the same thing. At that time, I wasn't thinking. I don't know what I was thinking. That person, I am not anymore. I just do not relate to that person anymore. They're a normal person like anyone else. So you cannot now define the killer according to what they did in the past because they go through times, they go through resolutions themselves. They go, oh my goodness, what have I done? In fact, usually when a criminal gets caught, they sort of put on this, macho, like, who cares, put me in jail. But then you put him behind bars And then they tell you later, oh, you know, I thought about it and it was quite stupid what I did. So in other words, when they come to their senses, then they realize how foolish their behavior was. So again, it is very important not to let this hatred just sort of paint the entire person as one big object of hate. Okay, the second reason why a Nyani doesn't not have hate is because, as I said, it damages the hater. And a Nyani has gone through these 5 sadhanas, which imply Dharma. I follow Dharma whenever I can. So the Nyani has gone through this process of following or abiding in Dharma. In fact, Krishna, after all options are exhausted, what does Krishna do? Kills Kansa. After all options are exhausted, what does Krishna do? Tells Arjuna, go and kill Duryodhana. So this means instead of hating, try to help them. Try to educate them if you can. If you cannot, then use danda, the stick. In the case of Kansa, in the case of Duryodhana, that's what happened. They could have not been helped. They were doing their Adarma. Everything that could have been done was done. It failed. Then use the stick. The third reason, and Pavan said this, was a Nyani doesn't individuate forms as though they have their separate existence. That person has their separate existence. Therefore, I'm going to hate that existence. That person has their separate existence, so I'm going to hate their existence. Instead, a Nyani realizes all forms resolve into myself. Just as an entire dream world of characters and people and cups and rows and traffic system, and you're in this dream, and you find yourself one of the people in this dream. And some people are over there doing something fishy, some people over there are praying and devoting to the Lord, some people are in the Vedanta class on Zoom, and you're just witnessing this. You're going, wow, this dream is so real. So many laws and orders here. So much intelligence here. And you're having a discussion and argument. Sometimes there's conflict. Sometimes there's agreement. And then a dream person comes to you and says, this dream that you're now experiencing, all of it resolves into you. All knowledge, all power. This is what a Nyani understands. You're only ever speaking about yourself here. There's no one else other than you. I alone am. This is a Nyani's point of understanding. So there's no question of hating myself. Now, does this now mean be all, rosy and don't display any feelings of firmness? Just be like a little, like a little doll and just let everyone get away with it? Is this what I'm saying? Not at all. First, be firm wherever is, just like Krishna was firm with Kansa and Duryodhana, but it doesn't make them hate them. Okay. Finally, what is the result of non-hating? Nyani is a friendly person. Why is Nyani a friendly person? Because the 5 sadhanas imply they have exposed themselves to other people. How will you ever know where is your weakness unless you expose yourself to people? Because when you're in the field of other personalities, what happens? We get triggered. That is the only way we can discover what potential we're still holding, because that potential expresses itself when? In meditation. So just when we want a silent mind, all sorts of funny thoughts start coming. And we're like, where is this coming from? How do you know what's going on? One way is to simply be with the environment, because the environment is your aid, is your mirror reflection, which lets you know what kind of personality you still have to work on. So Nyani doesn't run away from the world, because then you're taking all of that unresolved potential and you're thinking, oh, I'm so free, I've got no problems. And then one little bird does a little quack and you get annoyed. Like, oh, how dare you, broke my peace. What's the Jnani's attitude towards Adarma? Again, wishes no ill will towards people. Doesn't say, I wish they got out of here, they don't deserve to live and I want them to die. This is not what we're talking about. At the same time, the person isn't aloof towards them, but attempts to help them if possible. If not, then let someone else help them. Okay, finally, next week, we will continue verse 13 because we haven't ended it. with another attribute of a Nyani, and that is the absence of the notion of mine or my thoughts, my knowledge, etc. Homework. Think of these 5 sadhanas: Jnana Yoga, Upasana Yoga level 2, level 1, Karma Yoga level 2, and level 1. Think of them and then ask, which one do I feel attracted to? Which one kind of pulls me? And then make a list of 5 things that you can do to incorporate that sadhana that attracts you throughout your day. You don't have to do all 5 things, but just as one of those 5 things. And then resolve to follow one of those 5 things or more for 7 days. Make it a commitment. I'm going to do it at least for 30 seconds for 7 days. After 7 days, ask, how am I doing? Review. And then make changes according to the feedback you've received in the last 7 days. And then you can either continue the next 7 days or you can change your approach. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.